Look, the most flexible thing in any environment is the people. Give people options and choices, zone it appropriately, create opportunities for people to get up and move to spaces. I don't have to sit here. I'm not tethered and tied to this one spot, right? Get up and move.
This is the Workplace Innovator podcast, where we talk with corporate real estate and facility management leaders about the industry trends, challenges, and technologies impacting your organization. This show is powered by Petrusky, the global work tech company providing software solutions for people, workplaces, and assets to enable you to work your world. Hey folks, welcome back to the show. It's me, Mike P., live in our nation's capital, well, my nation's capital, the USA nation's capital, Washington, D.C., back for another visit at HOK here in beautiful Georgetown. And sitting across from me in real life, the one, the only, the incomparable Kay Sargent. Welcome back to the show, Kay.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
I am well. I am doing great. And it's great to be here. Thanks for meeting with me again. You are a frequent flyer on the Workplace Innovator podcast.
Do I get some kind of reward points or something? What do I get for that?
We're working on that. We've got a new special program for podcast guests. Remember SNL did that whole 5 timers club?
Yeah.
I think you're getting close. The gift bag's in the mail. And there's some Petrusky swag coming your way as a thank you for all of your contributions to this little podcast that I started about 5 years ago. But let's rewind even further. 6 years ago, I had a little show called the FM Innovator podcast, and I came here to this very office and sat across from you, industry legend, living legend.
No, I've just been around for a while, Mike. That's all it is.
No, listen, I was so scared, so intimidated by your presentation you had done at the Capital chapter of IFMA a couple weeks prior. I walked up to you and said, "Hi, Kay, I'm a host of a podcast. Can you come on my show?" And you're like, "Sure." And we sat down here and talked about things happening in the world of work and the workplace and facility management. And it was the spring of 2017. So 6 years ago, almost to the day.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that first encounter with DJ Mike P?
I remember, well, we've met in crazy places, Mike. Like you've come and met me at the airport.
That was much later, but yes, I have a great memory of that.
Okay, so was that the time that I was supposed to, I had to go to Norway instead of doing something, so we recorded something in advance, or was that another time?
That was later, but that was you've got so many of these memories because every time I've asked you to help me in some way, shape, or form, you've answered that call. So let me start by saying thank you, Kay Sargent.
Well, happy to.
For doing what you do.
What I do remember is that you had quite the little setup. And it was pretty impressive. Oh, I think that was the time you actually did it just on your phone. And now, compared to what you have now,
it's come a long way.
You have quite the little setup. It's like a whole traveling studio.
Mobile studio here.
I love it.
Yeah, I love it too because we sound so much better. I think it's just makes it more enjoyable for the listener.
Okay.
So you've done it so many times. We just came off of a great conversation with a panel at World Workplace Nashville in the fall of last year.
And there was singing and dancing involved. I remember that one.
Of course, sure. Baby Come Back.
Yeah.
You know, trying to speak for the office and its sadness that no one is attending anymore. That was a 5-year reunion show of the FM Innovator. But now I want to go back even a year prior to that, where you offered to sit down with me and share some of your predictions for the future of the workplace.
Okay.
And I think a lot of what you said was prescient. Prescient? What is that word?
You got it.
You predicted a lot of things in advance of a little pandemic that no one at that time would have anticipated. And so many of the changes, I re-listened to that episode just recently and I jotted down some notes. So are you game to go back and revisit some of the things you said and then maybe even give the audience some new predictions for 2023 and beyond, the future of the workplace.
Yeah, they say you should never go back and relive your past or your predictions, but yeah, let's do it. What the heck? I'm game. Let's
grade K Sargent.
How crazy was I?
Put you on the hot seat here.
Was I off or was I on? Let's see.
Oh, you were on.
Okay.
You were on, Kay. And the audience is not going to be surprised to find out some of the things you said. I was stunned because at the time, as I mentioned, I was drinking from a fire hose. I'm like, what is this woman saying? I have no idea what these words mean. I feel like I was like a rookie quarterback in his first game in the NFL. And they always say that it's so fast that it just overwhelms an athlete. Not that I am an athlete, far from it, but it overwhelms a quarterback, especially trying to make the decisions and see all the defenses and all what's going on and make those calls. And then they say the more experience, the more reps you get, the game slows down.
And look at you now, a seasoned pro.
Well, I don't know about that, but looking through the rearview mirror, I can now understand what you were talking about, at least. And I'm amazed at how
well, let's see if anybody else can understand it.
Yeah.
Let's see.
But before we do that, did I ever ask you about music? What kind of music do you listen to get inspired or find your happy place?
I listen to all kinds of crazy music. But actually my favorite thing to do now is when I'm in a car with my kids and they'll take my phone and be like, listen to this. And they'll put stuff on there that I never would have found or discovered. And then I'm all excited about it.
Cool.
They think it's the funniest thing on the planet. But my daughter and her friend have rediscovered Elvis, right? Because of the movie.
I've heard of him.
And yes. And so, but there's all these crazy compilations. And so there's this one where they take Toxic from Britney and Viva Las Vegas and put those two together.
Really?
And it is awesome.
I got to find that.
If I'm on the car, if I just need to be in a good mood, I just listen to that because it's awesome.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Viva Las Vegas.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that.
I'm going to have to play it for you.
DJ Mike P production.
Yeah.
Awesome. I will look that up.
Okay.
Add that to my Spotify playlist.
All right, you got it.
So that said, K Sargent, back in the spring of 2017, you talk about your belief in the power of place, and you wanted to blend the art of design with the science of place. And we talked about what's next, how we need to be innovative, because we're designing spaces for the next 5, 10, 20 years. So the future of the built environment is impacted today. So you talked about driverless cars, you talked about AI, and you talked about other technological advances being on the horizon. Where do you feel 6 years later we are with those things?
Well, I mean, a lot of that is the reality today, but I think a lot of it is still not fully embraced. We talk about the metaverse and we talk about artificial intelligence and look, they're already here. They've already been, we already are experiencing some of it. I think the question is, when do you have that uptick that puts it from just being a novelty to being kind of commonplace, right? Yeah. What's that thing that's going to kind of push it over the edge? And I think we're starting to see more and more of that. And you got building automation systems and management systems, all kinds of stuff. I don't think we leverage technology nearly as much as we should. We do amazing jobs in our car, but when it comes to the workplaces, we still just aren't really fully embracing it as much as we could or should. And I think a lot of people are overwhelmed by technology. They're afraid to make a wrong decision.
Yep.
And so they don't make any decision at all. Mm-hmm. And I think often when I talk to people in the AV IT industry, it's how quickly everything is evolving in their world is exciting, but it also freaks people out to the point that they don't know when to get in because they don't want to buy something that then just becomes totally irrelevant.
Totally. Yeah. And I often remind people on this show the wisdom from the Canadian poet Geddy Lee, who said, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
Yes.
That's
exactly.
a little rush for you.
Yeah.
Free will.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Add that to your Spotify.
I will.
Another thing we talked about a lot, and I want to hear your thoughts about it today, is this next generation. And the Gen Z was on the horizon when we last spoke. You did a presentation about generational shifts. Here we are 6 years later. They're in the workforce. We talked about that generation growing up in a very technological world and their desire for more authentic, high-touch experiences. The more high-tech we get, you said high-touch.
Right.
You think that's coming into reality in the way you design spaces today?
I think if you look at what happened during the pandemic, we had a whole lot of people that got into crafting in a way that just was unbelievable, right? So, they kind of are balancing the technology with that, very hands-on, whether it's gardening or plants or, makers or, all kinds of things. I think there's this real surge in that kind of maker mentality.
Sure.
But boy, I got to tell you, I really feel for a generation that had to go through lockdown in those pivotal years where, whether it's social elements or school or whatever it was, I think we're going to be living with the ramifications. The social ramifications of COVID are going to long outlive the medical ramifications of COVID. I really believe that.
Yeah.
And I think we need to do anything and everything that we can to kind of start to address that. Because there was a lot of isolation, there was a lot of people that retreated to different types of environments, whether it's virtual reality or all these crazy places on the internet. And I also think that they didn't, even young emerging professionals, they didn't have the same onboarding experience. It was very truncated and it was very isolated from, I think, what the rest of us actually went through. And, when you're in spaces and when you go someplace, we model people's behavior. We all do it.
Yeah.
We all do it. Whether we want to or not, we mimic
others.
And we learn. And in the void of having that, I just think it's really interesting to see how they kind of have evolved and emerged. I mean, I'm really excited about the younger generation because they have amazing talents and the energy that they have, it's just amazing and incredible.
True.
But I do at the same time really feel like we need to take extra care because they've gone through something at a very pivotal point of their life that probably when I was the absolute most social, they were in lockdown and they socialize in a different way.
Yeah.
But there's really nothing that replaces being with people and connecting.
Yeah, exactly. And that's my big concern. And listen, I'm looking at a note from 6 years ago. You were talking about your concerns about well-being and mental health in teenagers at the time that were coming up because they were already head down in their technology. And here we are 6 years later, and the CDC just releases this report that says the crisis is even more stark than we even imagined.
It is the highest rate of teen depression that we've ever had, and the highest number of teenage girls contemplating suicide, cyberbullying. I mean, all of it is just kind of skyrocketed because there's just new ways. For every good thing that the internet brings, there's also kind of a bad thing that it brings too.
Yeah. So this is the question I have for you. We know these things to be true, and now we have workplace leaders afraid to make policies that may hurt them in the war for talent or the need to retain their top talent. And we've talked about this a little. The value of the office, the value of workspaces helping us as organizations, but more broadly as a society to care for people. What do you think? What is the purpose of the office going forward?
I think the purpose of the office going forward is to help connect people to one another. I think it is to do a variety of different types of work. And I think here's the most important thing, Mike, and I think it gets lost in all of these conversations. The meaning of the office and the purpose of the office is going to be different things for different people.
Right.
For some people, it's not safe for them to work at home, or they're not able to. They don't have the infrastructure, or they don't have the discipline, or they don't want to. And so the office is a place of energy. It's a place of guidance. It's a place of mentoring. It's a place for gathering. It could be a place for, doing that heads down, concentrated solo work. And I know everybody says, we're going to do all of that at home. I mean, if you're a young parent and you've got kids, there's as many distractions in our houses as there are in our offices in many cases. And so it's not this nirvana. And I think far too often everybody makes assumptions based on what works for them, not understanding that other people might have a very, very different situation. So the office still has to be a place to address a lot of those things. But I think one of the primary reasons is that building social capital, that connectivity to our coworkers, to our colleagues, even just the energy. Like if I have a choice of working in a hotel room or going and sitting in the lobby, I'll usually go sit in the lobby.
Yeah,
because I just feed off of that. And I think many people do. So I think it's going to serve many purposes for many people. The question I think is, do you need to be there 5 days a week to get that?
And that is the dilemma because so many things are bracketed by these extreme polarized views, 5 days a week versus remote work forever. And you and I have talked about this many times, that that's not where the solution lies. It's a nuanced conversation. It's different for different people, roles, cultures. So let's get real, Kay Sargent. That's the title. That's got to be the title for this new podcast episode. Getting Real with Kay Sargent. I just came from a conference, Work Tech, and it was in the financial New York district. So a lot of banks, a lot of financial institutions being represented. And the discussion was mandate versus magnetize the office, the workplace. Thoughts on mandates?
They're coming. Whether I think they should be coming or not is a whole other thing. But our clients are all telling us that they really want to get people back to the office because they value having people in spaces where they can learn, they can transfer knowledge, they can do the mentoring and the professional development. There's a whole variety of reasons and different reasons for different companies. And they've heavily suggested it, but people aren't taking them up on it.
Yeah.
That they're very resistant to that. And, Mike, I think in the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of people asked a stupid question. Okay, and I'm going to give your audience all kinds of things to take a different opinion on. So here's the first one. There is such a thing as a dumb question. Mother of 5, I get dumb questions all the time.
Right.
Actually, they're getting better and better. But when we ask people what they wanted, it's not that I don't care what people want, but if you asked me honestly, and I answered honestly what I want for dinner, I want chocolate for dinner. But
every night. Yes.
Right. I don't eat chocolate for dinner because I know the consequences. We're asking people what they want without any thought about what the consequences are. And I think we're going to look back in 5 years and say, why did we have such high churn? Why do we not have emerging leaders? Why aren't we hitting our DEI and or our sustainability targets or our goals? And a lot of it is going to be based on the decisions that we're making here. And we're not really thinking of the ramifications of those decisions. People are making a decision based on what they want immediately. They're not necessarily thinking about what works best for the company, about what might be best for their coworkers. They're not even thinking about what might be best for their long-term career, right?
Individually, yeah.
Right, because we know proximity bias is a real thing. And yes, you can overcome it, but you have to put in a lot of place. And I'm going to say something else. I think our industry is being set up for failure. That everybody is looking at us and saying, create this amazing workspace that'll solve the hybrid problem. Hybrid is more of an operational model than it is a workplace solution. And if you're expecting me to create this great space, we can. But if people aren't there, and it's not, you don't have the energy, or you don't reinforce the policies, and people start having these silos and inequities and all of these things, it's going to affect your culture, and it's going to affect how people feel about it. And I can't solve that problem by myself. We need HR, we need IT, we need FMs, we need everybody to come together and to realize that this has got to be a holistic solution that we put together to help address this problem.
Absolutely. So that's where I want to get your practical advice for my audience, because I have a lot of facility management professionals listening, a lot of corporate real estate leaders trying to make decisions, but they often aren't the ones making the policies. So going back to our 6-year-old conversation, you talked about the role of the FM and the shifting responsibilities, getting away from the tactical operational responsibilities, getting more towards the concierge services and creating that environment that brings people to an office. Because even back then, Kay, you said that we were questioning, why have offices? We can work from home. Mobility was a thing back 6 years ago.
Yeah, it was.
And you said the FM was shifting to a question of, why do people even come to this building? And that's our job, is to create a reason for the office.
Well, I think one of the things that infuriates me, Mike, is that everybody is kind of saying, again, I'm going to be an equal opportunity offender here, but everybody's saying, we've never been here before. Well, we've had clients that have been working remotely for 30 years. We've had clients that have been working in a hybrid manner for over 10. We've never seen it at this scale before. That, I think, is what's new. And it went on long enough that people formed new habits and routines, and then kind of those became entrenched right?
Exactly.
And how quickly, by the way, all of a sudden everybody's entitled to something that they didn't have before. But that's the reality that we're living in now. And I think, people that are throwing their hands up in the air and saying, well, who knows? We're all just guessing. That drives me insane because we actually know a lot. And we need to not just be guessing. I'm not saying we shouldn't be testing and piloting, but you don't just randomly throw something at a dartboard. Like, this is about that leveraging the science and the art of design, right?
Okay.
This is where we need to lean in heavily to really understand what kind of work people are actually really doing. So this whole question about whether I should work remotely or not has far less to do with what you actually want and far more to do with what kind of job do you have? Do you have a job that you can do solely and independently? Do you have a job that you can be remote? Do you need to be with people? Like, what are you actually doing? What are your mobility profiles? What are your gathering profiles? What is your interaction with other individuals? There's a way that we really should assess this. And just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
That's right. So we talk about this a lot on the show, and I want to really drill down on it. The human experience. We have lots of history of knowing what makes people tick, human beings. And you actually talked years ago about productivity and engagement. It can be measured. So we need to define outcomes more broadly. It's not just about widgets. It's about the culture, the connectivity, the community, this thing that's kind of intangible. Is there a way to put a number on that or to see if we're making progress towards a better organization?
Yeah, that's where I think oftentimes the engagement scores can come in. Like, how engaged are you? How connected do you feel to your company, or do you feel to your colleagues, or how happy are you, or how satisfied are you? Those kinds of measures. But I think we always focus on one or two measures, and I think there's actually probably a half dozen that we really need to be thinking about and focusing on to really get a better picture.
Yeah.
Because I could be one of the most productive people in the world, but what I'm producing is crap, and or I'm really unhappy and miserable and I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
So I think we need to think about kind of those higher levels and higher different ways that we really start to focus it. I think forever our industry has been so focused on space-centric measurements that we really need to think about human-centric measurements.
Mm-hmm. I would love that. If we could come up with ways to better measure the satisfaction of an individual as they contribute to a team. It's both, and it's not one or the other. And I think we're missing something there. I think the younger generation doesn't even know what they're missing because they never experienced a vibrant, buzzing office. But I'm optimistic, Kay. I have seen the future.
No, good. I'm glad you've seen the future.
I've seen co-working spaces do it well. I've seen that in New York City in the last few weeks. I've visited several places where there was a buzz. There were a lot of young people, and they were enjoying it, and they told me so. I think we need to bottle that and give it to organizations and workplace leaders everywhere in a practical way. So just to close the loop for my FM audience, you said it 6 years ago, their role is changing. They've done all they can to accommodate this evolution of workspaces and hybrid working and redesigns and being ready for people to come back. And they want to give them that level of employee experience. And they even are open to being that experience manager for the virtual world, right? So what could they do differently, better? When I hear frustrated facility management professionals concerned about their future, any thoughts on what they should be learning, doing, how they can be better prepared for what comes next?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I think that we're going to go through a period of rethinking things, adjusting things, and tweaking things, which, quite frankly, in North America has always been fairly rare. North America has the longest lease times and the most extensive build out.
Okay.
And so the mantra has always been, get it right, because it's going to be there for 10 years.
Yeah. Or 20.
And we're going to spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay. And so there isn't a lot of pushing the envelope. There isn't a lot of experimenting. So I embrace the notion that right now there's so many people that are willing to experiment and try some different things just to kind of to see. But I think we also need to be patient and understand that we're in the middle of an evolving situation, and it's going to continue to evolve and change. That when you are doing testing, if you test everything, you test nothing, because you can never determine, well, what was the factor or what was the thing that put it over the edge or made the difference. And if you, maybe somebody liked one thing, but if you took it out of that setting or environment, would that have an impact? I think we're going to make some mistakes. I think there's going to be a lot of mistakes, and I think we can predict what the mistakes are. One of the things that you can already see coming that you know is going to happen, I'll put $100 of my money on the table to say this, and I never put my own money on the table, but I will.
It's big.
I think we're going to overdo gathering spaces. Everybody's saying the only reason that people are coming back is to gather and to connect and to meet. And so they're gutting whole parts of buildings and just creating these massive connection and gathering spaces. Now, I think that's important. And I think when we come back, I think there's going to be a focus on that, because that's, we've been denied that. So now that's what we're going to actively seek. But over time, we're going to need some balance, right? So we're trying to tell our clients, yes, you need to have more purposeful and better designed gathering spaces, but don't get rid of all the individual work spots, because people are still doing individual work and you want them to, right? I think the other thing is that people are just going to pluck those things down right in the middle of spaces, and they're going to fail, because it's kind of like you're just creating this mush. You're throwing gathering spaces right next where people are trying to concentrate, and there's going to be conflicts, there's going to be noise, there's going to be sound, and we all have a heightened sensitivity to sound. Okay, so we've now gone into and been in isolation where for many people, there wasn't a lot of background sound, or you could totally control whether you listen to music or this. Now we're coming back into shared spaces. And so many people are on Zoom calls sitting at their desk. Yeah. They're not in meetings anymore. They're sitting right there. And so the sounds that we're hearing are far more distracting and annoying, and we have that heightened sensitivity. So we're going to have to work that out, and there are some acoustics. I think, look, the most flexible thing in any environment is the people. Give people options and choices, zone it appropriately, create opportunities for people to get up and move to spaces, and create places where people can go to. If I want quiet, there's a place right over there that I can move to that is a little bit more quiet. I don't have to sit here. I'm not tethered and tied to this one spot, right? Get up and move.
We should come up with a name for this idea. Something like, I don't know, activity-based working.
Well, it's interesting,
design.
Mike, because we advocate neighborhood-based choice, which is smaller group settings. Because I think the other thing that people are missing is a sense of belonging.
Okay? Yeah, absolutely.
And so activity-based working has been around forever, 20 plus years. And we created neighborhood-based choice environments to give people some kind of a home base or a consistency, and to give them a sense of belonging and a connection.
Yeah, their team and their community, within the community, within the organization.
Some level of predictability, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
So, but now we have clients that are experimenting with taking that neighborhood and exploding it across the entire building and going to a zone model. And so like this part of the building is for focus, the other part of the building is for meetings, et cetera. And I think there's two things that concern me about that. Number one, we know that people have a laziness factor. If it takes me more than 50 feet to get to it, if I can't clearly see it and know that it's open and available, my likelihood of going there is diminished. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but it's diminished. And we also know that people tend to be creatures of habit. And right now, what they're seeking is that sense of belonging. I mean, I'm coming to the office to be with my colleagues. If I can never find them, or if they're doing different things, then I'm not with them. And there's just something nice about being around. You don't all have to be doing the same thing. But the fact that you're in the same space and you connect to each other and you can see each other, that also forms a connection. It's kind of like when you're all at home in an evening. You don't all have to be in the living room to feel that energy of having people in the house with you. Yeah, they could all be doing their own thing, but you know they're there, and you know you can see them, or you connect, or your paths are crossing. And so there's a sense of belonging and togetherness.
Very human
that is created.
Experience. Absolutely. All the things you said ring true for me. We've got to be radically open-minded, open to new ideas, get out of our own little bubble. The way I experience my work-life balance is different than you and different than everyone else on my team. So there is no answer that fits everybody. No policy, no place, no time schedule that is right for every person, place, and role. And I think we have a chance to inspire people. I think that's lost. The story is not being told.
Absolutely.
People are hungry. Young people, I've had these interactions recently. Younger people are hungry for mentorship, for growing in their career. They are ambitious, many of them. It's not this stereotype of the lazy Gen Z sitting on TikTok all day.
Yeah.
And I think if that's your mindset, that you're going to write off certain groups of people and, just be like, and I do this sometimes, I'm not ashamed to admit it, old man shouts at cloud. You don't want to be that guy or that person. You don't want to be that person who is closed-minded to rethinking the way things are done.
Yeah, and I also think we need to understand the why. So let's say there is somebody that just is kind of, kind of in that post-COVID pandemic zombie apocalypse. Maybe they're sitting on Zoom calls endlessly. I mean, if we're coming back to the office to sit on Zoom calls all day, that's just, it's horrible.
What's the point?
I jokingly said the best thing that could happen to this country is Zoom goes down for a week and all of a sudden everybody would snap out of that zombie apocalypse. But we have to snap people out of this funk that they're in, and we need to get people more active and engaged and just tied to a desk, sitting there on Zoom calls, trying to do all of these things hour after hour after hour is literally just sucking the life out of everybody. And we've got to snap that cycle.
Let's replace that funk with DC Funk, the home of funk. Bow, bow, down, bow. Come on, Kay. Bow, bow, down, bow.
You're never going to get me to sing. It's not going to happen because, my children hear me sing all the time, and they would say, Mike, be careful what you ask for.
Yeah, we'll play some James Brown, some Earth, Wind & Fire. We'll get you to sing the next time. Okay. When you're the 5-time visitor to the Workplace Innovator.
I think I passed that number, but okay.
Podcast.
Sure.
Kay Sargent, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to join me once again.
Always happy to.
Here on the Workplace Innovator podcast.
Thank you, Mike. Always a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. And there you have it, everybody. What I tell you, the incomparable Kay Sargent, Senior Principal and Director of Workplace at HOK. Good times, as always. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. We could have talked for hours, and we'll do it again soon to offer more insights and inspiration for all of us. Whatever our role in the workplace, we have a great opportunity to make a difference in our organizations. So I hope you will share this podcast with a colleague or a friend, anyone who might like to join us on our journey as we continue to encourage and inspire you to be a workplace innovator. Peace out. You've been listening to the Workplace Innovator Podcast, powered by Aptura, the epicenter of the future of work. For more about how we help organizations to engineer a thriving environment by enhancing their employee experience, workspaces, and asset value, please visit aptura.com.